Hey guys, thanks for tuning into my YouTube video. This video was made for my CGS3095 class, section UO2 with Professor Max Langen. My name is John Perez, and I'll be talking about software piracy and whether or not it is ethical. So in this video, the first thing I'm going to do is define software piracy and talk about a couple of its different types. Then we're going to see if software piracy is good or bad using the definition of good we agreed upon in class. Then we'll bring in an ethical standard to the mix. In this case, I chose utilitarianism. So I'm going to define it and use it to determine if piracy is ethical or not. So what is software piracy? Piracy is the act of illegally using, copying, or distributing software without ownership or legal rights. There are many different types of piracy, but these are the most prevalent. First, we have counterfeiting. This is the duplication, distribution, and/or sale of copyrighted material with the intent of making copyrighted product. This is kind of like a fake iPhone. The box, the charger, and the phone looks legit, but they aren't. Second, we have client-server overuse. This is when there's a single copy of the program installed on a server, and then everyone on the network uses the same copy at the same time. This is most common in enterprise users like in hospitals, schools, and businesses. Third, we have hard disk loading, and this happens when a business sells computers with illegal copies of a program to make the machines more attractive to buyers. And finally, we have online piracy, which is the most popular form of piracy. And this happens when software is downloaded illegally from the internet. So before we keep going, let me fill you in real quick on what we have been discussing in class. After analyzing several different ethical subjects, we determined that good is anything that increases happiness, progress, productivity, education, security, health, and investment. So with that in mind, let's apply this definition of good to software piracy. One of the reasons why software piracy is good, according to our definition, is that it increases the productivity of the pirate. For example, pretend I'm a photographer. In order to sell my work, I need to make it stand out in a way that attracts the attention of potential clients. One way to do this is to use a program on my computer that allows me to edit the photo in a way that makes it pop. There are many free-to-use programs available, but they're usually very slow or laggy and lack many of the features I need. That's when I turn to pirating a version of Adobe Photoshop. This allows me to boost the quality of my work, finish faster, and make more money since now I have more of my works available to my buyers. In a way, you can also say that pirating Photoshop increased my happiness, since I don't have to invest in an expensive piece of software, and now I'm making more money by selling my works. Now let's switch gears. The main reason why software piracy is bad is because it decreases the investment value for the creator. Using the same example as before, whenever someone pirates a copy of Photoshop, Adobe loses money. And the more money they lose, the less of an incentive they have to keep investing their time and resources into their product. This also results in a decrease in progress. Since they're not investing as much in their product as they used to, this means it will be a lot harder for them to push out updates and add new features. Now I'm sure you guys can come up with many more pros and cons for piracy, but at the end of the day, it all depends on what you believe is right. For example, you may think that the happiness of the photographer is worthless, and you may hold the company's losses to be more valuable. On the other hand, you may also think that the photographer's happiness is much more important than the company's losses. After all, they're rich, they can get over it. It all depends on what you think is valuable, as value is subjective. That's why it's important to introduce an ethical standard as a third party in order for our biases to not interfere with the results. So what is utilitarianism? Well, it's an ethical standard that promotes actions that increase happiness or pleasure and rejects actions that cause unhappiness or harm. Some of its main points are that pleasure or happiness is the only thing that has intrinsic value. It focuses on the results of an action rather than the action itself, and the more happiness produced by an action, the better. In other words, as long as an action promotes the happiness of the greatest number of people, the action is right. Also, another main point is that everyone's happiness counts equally. It doesn't matter whether you're the richest person on earth or the poorest, we're all equal. So, how is software piracy ethical based on utilitarianism? Well, as we already covered, the happiness of the greatest number of people is what matters. To explain a little better, I'm going to use an example kind of like the one we already used with the photographer. Imagine you work in an office where your boss is extremely cheap. Because of this, You and all of your coworkers end up using a program that is similar to Microsoft Office, but of lesser quality. In this case, if you were to pirate a version of Office and use that instead, you will end up finishing all of your day's work early, which would then allow you to clock out early and spend more time with your family. Now, on the other hand, Microsoft itself is a very large company, and a single person pirating their product doesn't really affect their overall profits. So in this case, you and your family are happy while not affecting Microsoft in a significant way. This means that the happiness caused by a single act of piracy far outweighs the damage done to its creator. The way of thinking we just covered is very narrow-minded, and things quickly change when you take a look at piracy on a global scale. In reality, around 37% of all software installed on PCs is unlicensed, according to the Business Software Alliance. And that's including software that is free to use. So if the study were to be performed only taking paid software into account, this percentage would be much higher. This would lead to software developers losing a much more significant amount of their profits, and in turn, development for their products will slow down as there's no point in investing resources in a product that isn't making any money. This affects everyone who uses the product, which includes everyone who paid for it as well as people who didn't. From this perspective, software piracy does not yield the greatest good for the greatest number of people, making it unethical. So in conclusion, utilitarianism may deem software piracy to be ethical or unethical depending on the amount of people pirating. If a single person were to pirate a piece of software, then the happiness caused by that act far outweighs the cons, making it ethical. However, if millions of people were to pirate at the same time, thanks to the internet, this happens every single day, then the cons definitely outweigh the pros, making it unethical. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.